Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's live stream. It's a pleasure to see you all here. Let's see how many people are in the live stream. There are 30 people now. Let's wait a few minutes to let those who are a bit late to get into the stream. And in the meanwhile, we can say hello to all the people's coming. So Thomas 1BO, welcome. Orion 57, welcome. Martin Baumann, yeah, he is probably addicted to my stuff. Hi, Martin. I hope everything goes well. Just say hello in the chat while we wait for the people to connect. Okay, 51 people. Hello to Marquet. You go to Ernest Rodriguez. Hello to Antonio Torcoli. Anton to Liquid Chris. Welcome to Squid. How many people do we have now? We have 53 people. Hello to James Roth. Hello to Corey Benson. Thank you for coming. Hello to Jonah Mazzocchi. Peter Per Jensen. Welcome. Kevin Coomer, Stretch, all welcome here. 74 people in here. Zero Wolf, hello. Okay, we are getting to the decent number of people. So thank you everyone for connecting tonight. This Sunday night. I hope this will be something interesting that will entertain you for this time. This is sort of prime time in Europe. This could be a bit early for the United States, but we can't obviously. I can. The time zones is something that I cannot fix myself, unfortunately. So this is the time that seems the best compromise to do these live streams. So here we are. So the tonight's live stream is about the F-35 superpower, the F-35 information fusion, which even more than stealth, in my opinion, is the key feature that makes the F-35 stand out from the other aircraft in the world. Is not the only aircraft that feature information fusion, but the aircraft and its capability of operating has been built around this capability. So it is quite important to understand it. And we will cover it in a detail that is very difficult to find anywhere else, at least on YouTube. We have already talked about this because it was in a few of the many videos that we devoted to covering the F-35, but we never got really in the detail. In fact, what we will be doing is reading together a scientific paper that is covering this subject. We will read it together. I hope it's about dozen pages. I hope we can get to the end. And while we read it, we comment it. And so if you have the patience and the interest of listening, this will be one of the probably one of the most illuminating things or experiences that you may have, in the sense, when I read this paper for the first time many years ago, I just realized that I didn't know what I didn't know. So it was one of the seminal papers that actually forced me to go and learn some stuff, which is the stuff that I normally tell you in my videos. So this is the plan for the night. But, you all know that the United States attacked the Iranian nuclear sites. And 24 hours after that, it is impossible, literally impossible, not covering that. So we will dedicate, I hope you don't mind, 10 or 15 minutes discussing the operation what was the name? Midnight? I forgot. Please, if you remember, type in the chat what was the name of the operation. It was Midnight something. But anyway, we will shortly discuss the operation, see from a technical point of view, even though the political implications are heavy, but I won't go in much detail in that. But little brother, guess, can you speak to me in your language? Well, no. Midnight Hammer. Yeah, thank you very much. And sorry, the live stream is in English. As by the way, is the audio okay? Because I have this. Yeah, everybody knows what this looks like. Okay. But it is a microphone, and I just wanted to be sure that the audio is okay. So drop me a line in the chat if the audio is okay, if you can hear me well. I'm Italian. I'm a native Italian speaker, but I prefer English, obviously, for this live stream. So. Okay, everybody. So, Jonah saying the audio is good. Martin is saying that the audio is good. Okay, very good. So let's start discussing the Operation Midnight Hammer. So let me share just a small map. Okay. So you can sum up the entire operation with a word, with a phrase, or better, with a phrase that is, if you let the Americans do what they do best, no wonder that they will hit you hard. In fact, that's what has happened. So the American attacked the Fordo fuel enrichment plant, the Natanz uranium enrichment complex, and the nuclear technology center of Esfahan. Esfahan was attacked by the US Navy with a launch of cruise missiles from submarine in the Indian Ocean. They launched 24 to 30 cruise missiles, and they all hit. And from the pictures that we have, the damage was quite heavy. The other two facilities, because they had plenty of underground installations, have been attacked in a different way. They have been attacked by a mission from continental United States, including 7 B-2, each one armed with one of these, which is the MOP or GBU-57, which is a more than 12 tons bomb with 5 tons of explosive that is designed to penetrate rocks and concrete at a certain depth, many tens of meters and then explode underground. This is a weapon that has been designed specifically to attack underground facilities. And there was a B variant that was developed specifically to attack Fordo, which is one of the centers that have been, one of the locations that have been attacked. So the weapon that if delivered in the right position, very dangerous. And the attack was conducted by 7 B-2s that dropped 14 of these weapons, which, by the way, is pretty more or less half of the US arsenal of these weapons. So they have enough probably to repeat an attack, but not much more. And these were actually accompanied by enormous strike, a very enormous, maybe not, but a large strike package that came from the Middle East. Part of the package conducted a misdirection, in the sense that they flew over Iraq and then they flew south, just to give the impression that the attack was not coming. Then the B-2s that were flying from the continental United States entered the Iranian airspace behind a strike package composed, the Americans said, 4th and 5th gen aircraft, most likely all 5th gen, and I'll explain you why in a minute. And they did what they normally say, they sometimes call it throw down the door. So they preventively attacked the Iranian air defenses, those that they know. In fact, they say that about 60 precision weapons have been launched by these aircraft against targets on the way to these two actually, Fordo and Natanz, to these two targets. They attacked the air defenses on the way, opening a corridor for the B-2s. Then the B-2s got in the area, deployed their super heavy munitions, and went back, flying again toward the continental United States. According to the American chairman of the Chiefs of Staff, about 125 aircraft have been involved in this operation. Now, probably at least a third, probably more, are just tankers. But it is a conspicuous number, definitely a conspicuous number. And I mean, in few months, we have seen at least 3 large operations, the one between India and Pakistan, the first Israeli attack on Iran, and now this American operation. I'm saying that it was all 5th gen because the Americans said that they are not aware of any weapon that has been launched against them, either on the way in or the way out. Their conclusion was that they were not seen and the Iranian was taken completely by surprise. And the damage that they did seems quite interesting, because Isfahan has been severely damaged by the cruise missiles. At least I don't have images of Natanz, but I have images of Fordo. As you can see, this is one one of the buildings. This is one of the entrances, and under this hill, well, under this mountain, there is the Fordo facility. Here, from the satellite image, you can see that there are two areas where there are possible entry points, and this one is a zoom in where it actually seems that there have been a subsidence, so this is most likely one of the point of entrance. And these are if you look at the map where this was hit, it is probably an area where nearby near the facility where the centrifuges for the uranium enrichment were located. I can probably show a picture. Let me see. Just a second. Yeah, this one. Okay, just a second. So, case is StreamYard. StreamYard has his own problems, because I have a nice picture that the nice, as long as these things can be nice. This is a picture that shows the hit points superimposed to what we believe is the layout of no. For some reason, StreamYard doesn't like it. Yeah, fine. But anyway, it seems that they actually hit where the nearby the centrifuges are. So we don't know exactly what has happened. Only the Iranians know. We know that most likely the Iranians transported something away from the area. The centrifuges were probably still there, because dismantling them is very complex. The gas in the centrifuges is extremely corrosive, is extremely toxic. So I don't believe that in a few days they could dismantle them and take them away. Moreover, the centrifuges are very delicate, even though those bombs did not penetrate, which is a possibility because Fordo is very deep. Even though they did not penetrate, it is possible that the hit and the seismic movement caused by the explosion could have damaged those centrifuges, and that would probably make the entire area, the entire installation uninhabitable, because it would be terribly toxic and radioactive and so on. In fact, it seems that the Iranians took something away and then they filled the entrance with dirt, which probably they did that probably to contain the potential spillover of radioactive gases and so on. They probably don't have the centrifuges anymore, but they have what they probably took away was the enriched uranium that was already available. So there are a few. So it is probably that as a strike, it was very effective. It probably did not destroy everything, but surely created massive problems to the Iranians. It had, at this point, I'm pretty sure that the Iranians, if they were not planning to get a nuclear weapon, I'm pretty sure that they will get one at this point. But I don't want to enter into this politic dimension. This is The most interesting thing from, say, an aeronautic point of view is the fact that the Iranian air defenses did not react at all, if you have to listen to the Americans. Now, I could understand that they didn't react to the track package, but the cruise missiles, they are not that difficult of a target. They didn't hit any one of them. They all hit the target. They didn't lose one on the way to the target. It's really strange. What I think it is happening is something as the Serbians did. So the Iranians have decided that in front of let's say air power that they cannot contrast in any way, that their air force is a legacy and air force. It's a miracle that what they managed to do with all the aircraft, but they're no match. Not even no match for a modern Russian equipped air force. So they are. So the air force did not react, and that is expected. The fact that the air defenses did not react was not expected. And the only explanation that I can have is that the Iranians have decided to preserve their air defenses and for the future, and they will react in different ways. So, I mean, I'm not. It's the fact that stealth justifies all of this. I don't get it, because is it possible? How is it possible that there was nobody in Iraq that didn't hear the noise of the aircraft? How is it possible that there was nobody, maybe in the, spies, informants, maybe in the Iraqi civilian air traffic control, that could tell them something is happening? And again, when they went through the border and they start attacking areas or positions where they thought there were air defenses in a preventive way, when the first starts being attacked, you have lost surprise. You are coming in, you have lost the surprise. It is impossible that they didn't even try to do something, particularly if there was some fourth generation aircraft that in this case would have been visible, and even launch some blind missiles in the generic direction where you think that the enemies are, just to give them something to worry about. Apparently they did nothing, and the only explanation that I can have is they have decided not to engage, to preserve their air defenses for maybe the future, or that's what the Serbs did. Okay, they preserved their forces, they set up decoys, they put all their stuff into hiding, and they came out the other side of the war with all their stuff intact. But in the end, they lost the war. The Serbs had to adapt to the cave to the requests of the West. So this is basically what happened. As I said at the beginning, if you let the Americans do what they do best, they don't complain if they kick you in the teeth. So this is what happened. And with this, if there are no questions, I would close this part because it took about 20 minutes and it was quite long. Let me check in the chat if anyone is asking for anything or has any question. Let's save our outdated AD system for a future war where they'll be even more obsolete and overmatched. Bizarre decision. Yes, something strange going on. I said at the beginning, because even the reaction to the Israeli attacks was, minimal. I mean, I have yet to see one picture of the Iranian air defenses trying to engage anything. It's all AAA. Do you think the interceptor situation is a red alarm for the US? Maybe not red, but probably yellow. I mean, the very fact that the Iranian tried to intercept ballistic missiles, very long-range ballistic missiles, with the Iron Dome that is designed for drones, artillery rocket, is telling that there is something wrong. There are videos in which it's clearly the Iron Dome, the one that intercepted the Qassam missiles that the Palestinian from Gaza used, that is trying to obviously miserably failing, is trying to intercept a ballistic missile. It's impossible. Why do you think Iran refused to cooperate with Russia regarding air defenses per Putin's comment a few days ago, or did I misunderstand something? No, that's very interesting. It's true. It's exactly what happened. In the agreement that the Russia and Iran in January, I believe, signed a mutual support agreement. And the Russians apparently wanted to include a clause about mutual support, military mutual support. That didn't happen. The Iranians didn't want to sign it. So they went on with commercial, diplomatic, other stuff, but not with the military. So it's difficult to say why. There are, let's say, rumors, impressions from some Russian observers that said that Iran is a difficult country to cooperate with because they have sort of ideologic tint to their actions, even though it's not a theocracy, okay? It's not a religious state as it is often depicted on the outside. It's a pretty laical state. The impact of religion is not as heavy as is often depicted in the Western media, but apparently it's enough to create some difficulties. What about the reporting of massive electronic jamming at the time of the US attack? Yes, it was part of the strike package. But again, if you do jamming, you roughly know the position of the jammer. And even though you can't target the jammer, you can't have a fire solution. And because passive solutions like this are something that became available in the last 20 years. Older systems are incapable of doing that. They just tell you more or less where the direction of the threat, but they don't give you a weapon grade track. So the average system that is being jammed knows the direction of the jammer, is able to have more or less. So why not launching even a blind missile to give the jammer something to worry about? Why not do that and then scoot away so you avoid the reaction? I don't, as I said, there's something strange that I don't understand in all this situation. I mean, the Iranian air defenses are not the best in the world. That goes to Russia and China, but surely no observer thought that they were so poor. So something should be going on. So Russia, who can protect themselves, are going to protect Iran. Israel destroyed the S-300, the S-400 last year. What is Russia sending this time? Well, last year they hit the S-300, and then they hit one launcher of the S-400. They didn't destroy the system. The S-300 that Iran has are quite old, to be honest, so not the latest update systems. Well, but Russia can send probably more and more modern S-400. And can send all those strange radars, electronic surveillance systems that they have that should be capable of, if not if not engaging, at least detecting the presence of stealth aircraft in an area. That's what they can say. They can send. Okay, it's 8:30, and thank you very much for being very kind. Hello? Okay, StreamYard tonight is not very stable, unfortunately. So I think we can leave this subject and move on to the main part of the live stream right after a short break. Just let me drink something. Okay, here we are. So this is the pièce de résistance of this evening. Grab a cup of coffee because this will take some time. So this is a paper, a scientific paper that has been presented in electronic conference, in the IEEE electronic conference, and this from all these gentlemen, which are all affiliated with Lockheed Martin. Okay, and before someone shouts, this is a leak, this is stuff that should not go in the public domain, this paper is released into the public domain. So it's all information that anyone interested could go and read from themselves. As I said, this was a paper that was very important to me because made me aware of a number of things which I did not know. So what we're doing is reading through this. I will skip some parts, and we will comment the parts that I believe are interesting. This is definitely for nerds. So, as I said, sit down, grab a cup of coffee or your favorite drink, and let's start. In his 1982 book Megatrends, John Naisbitt predicted that in the information age we would find ourselves drowning in information but starved for knowledge. For many, which is pretty much the sensation that I have, so I think he was right. For many aviation and military applications, as the amount of information increases, the sheer volume of data becomes overwhelming and results in the loss of situational awareness. As the amount of data increases and control choices multiply, the pilot workload increases exponentially to a point where eventually even the most able pilot begins if the most able pilots begin to miss important information or fail to recognize critical situations. The loss of situational awareness degrades the reaction time of the user. Schenck coined the term data smog, which I like, to describe the data overload caused by the dramatic increase in information without a means to readily incorporate the information with significance. In Consilience, the Unity of Knowledge, E.O. Wilson predicted the need for a synthesizer that could combine relevant information at the right time to support critical decision. Can identify fusion algorithms as the synthesizer to reduce information overload, improve situational awareness, and reduce user reaction time. Okay. I think so far, so good. It's pretty much just something that we know. The proliferation of data makes extracting a picture and taking a decision, going through the so-called OODA loop, orient, observe, decide, and act, in very difficult. So something needed to be done. So, fifth generation fighters with their diverse sensor suite and multi-role mission sets require some form of information fusion to support pilot situational awareness. Figure 1. This that you see is an actual picture of the F-35 mega screen that dominates the F-35 cockpit. As you can see, you have on the left a screen, the left half, a screen with a tactical situation, and on the right you have data feeds. For example, this one in the. By the way, do you see my cursor? By the way, let me know in the chat, please. I mean, the gray one is probably an EOTS picture or a DAS picture. These two gray images are probably infrared feeds and somehow. Okay, it's visible, so it's fine. These two gray are probably the EOTS or DAS images that are coming from various sensors and so on. As you notice, this looks like a video game, and it is much different than the picture of a radar, where the pilot just sees the blips in front of the aircraft, and that's pretty much it. Then potentially in another screen, a different screen has the data that are coming from an AWACS, for example, through the data link. So the F-35 avionics suite comprises several complementary sensors and off-board data link, but is a single seat fighter with no weapon system operator. Off-board data links, off-board data, off-board sensors, off-board measurements. This is extremely important. This is an extremely important concept. Stuff that comes or is transmitted out of the aircraft or into the aircraft. Without some full information fusion, the pilot will be left to manually correlate sensors and data links tracks together while executing tactical air, land, and sea missions, while also trying to fly the aircraft. This combination of factors can increase pilot workload and quickly lead to an overwhelming amount of displayed information. Information fusion algorithms aggregate the onboard and offboard sensor information to provide a complete and accurate representation of the environment. Again, onboard, offboard, resulting in an increase in situational awareness, which is the ultimate goal of fusion. So far, so good. So let's get into the details. The terms data fusion, sensor fusion, information fusion are often used interchangeably. Actually, there are some formal definitions of data fusion that are used in the American tradition. These are data fusion is the combining of information to estimate or predict the current or future state of the environment. So the purpose is estimate or predict. Estimate, not ascertain. So you will never have the certitude of what is going on. But at the same time, you want to predict what is going to happen. Level 1 fusion is focused on object assessment. Level 1 fusion algorithms include 1, data association algorithm, which determine whether information from multiple sources describe the same objects, and 2, state estimation algorithm, which estimate the current, and in some cases future, state of the physical object in the environment. The estimate includes both kinematic state, position and velocity, and acceleration, and an estimate of the object's identification. These are the two main elements that constitute the raw material of information fusion. The kinematic state of the track of the target. So where is it? Where is going, where is it and where it is going, and on the other side, what it is. These all go together because these are two categories, two classes of information that are necessary for the pilot to work out which is the situation and decide what to do. Level 1 fusion, as I said, focuses on using data from different sensors to do this estimation, estimate the kinematic state and estimate the ID. But that's not the whole thing. Level 2 fusion focuses on aggregating level 1 objects, inferring relationship between the objects and corresponding events, and assessing the unfolding situation. Level 3 fusion assesses the impact of perceived, anticipated, or planned actions in the context of unfolding situation. For instance, in terms of lethality and survivability. Sorry, I read two together. So, level 2 actually aggregates these level 1 objects that are identified and infers the relationship among them. Could be the relationship between the two different aircraft in the same flight, or it could be the relationship between a track that, for example, is identified optically, and then it's also identified by the radar to make sure that it is indeed the same object, or could be potentially two different objects. Level 3 assesses the impact of the situation and the context. For example, level 3 a system is level 3 fusion if it is capable of telling the pilot, look, this aircraft or this ground-based air defensive is an immediate threat. That the other, because you are getting into the detection area, in detection zone, or into the no escape zone. That other one down there, you can avoid at the moment, is not so important. Level 4 fusion is focused on process refinement, including sensor resource management or sensor feedback to modify sensor actions and refine the overall situational picture, which means the sensors let you identify and characterize a track, say an aircraft that is flying, that is there, is flying at altitude, at that speed, that direction. We identify that it is a model such and such of the aircraft with potentially, let's say, this type of payload. And but, for example, the other track that it is there, it is, we know that it is probably a fighter, but the sensor didn't have the time to actually detect it, to identify it yet. So now the sensor, now that they have completely characterized the track A, they should focus on the track B to completely characterize it. And there is a track C down there that is not really more important, whatever it is. So we don't spend too much time in looking into that track, because yeah, it's far, we don't care too much. Okay, that's the situation. So these 4 levels of sensor fusion, these are the kind of capability that needs to be built into the aircraft, and the F-35 has all of them. So I hope everything is clear so far. Okay. There are many published algorithms that offer methods to address each of these fusion situations, fusion functions. However, in the field of the imperfect nature of data and the varying fidelity of disparate data sources, make the fusion problem much more challenging to solve. In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. Okay. Object refinement is relatively easy when there are, this is level 1, when there are few well-separated objects, but as the number of objects increases and spacing decreases, so you can't really make sure that the blip is just two aircraft rather than just one, the data association problem can become much more difficult or even unsolvable. The potential for the object to perform maneuvers coupled with a highly dynamic environment involving multipath interference, signal block, multipath interference, signal blockage, and weak signals can complicate the ability of fusion to make sense of the environment. Information fusion must be robust enough to provide reliable situational awareness even in this challenging environment. That is, a radar doesn't work like in a video game. The blips comes and go. You may need to have to use most of the resources of the radar to investigate a specific track. In that case, you may lose sight of the stuff that is going on around. The optical systems may spot something that is not there. There could be false positive. So the data coming from the sensors are very dirty. As I said, it's not a video game. It's more, it's the conceptual equivalent of watching one of the old analog TVs that are not well synchronized when the image is all blurry. You can sort of work out what is going on, but the quality of what you're seeing is terrible. And this is a situation that may well happen, and at a certain distance from the aircraft, which could be tactically relevant, is guaranteed to happen. So sensor fusion should consider that. Okay. Any questions so far? I'm just looking if you have any question, because we just finished the first chapter. I can We can answer. Just drop it in the chat. Okay, no. The people that are having a chat among themselves, so it's perfectly fine. And I'm seeing that a number of people actually left the stream because, yeah, I understand that this is not everyone's. I understand that this is not everyone's cup of tea. So yeah, that's fine. Just a short pause, and we start again. So, evolution of fusion technology. The first radar was introduced to a fighter in the mid-1940s. As confidence grew in this technology, pilots came to rely on the radar to provide situational awareness in the environment. A radar warning receiver was later added to give a coarse indication of the general direction of hostile emitters. In the 70s and 80s, new sensors and data links added secondary sources of range tracks. What does this mean? With data link, so first of all, what is a track? A track is, in this context, obviously, because in tracking a track is a different thing. But in this context, a track is a logical record that contains the data that we saw before with the level 1 fusion, no? The kinematic characterization and the ID of the identification of the aircraft. So it's a logical record. Data links from AWACS, other aircraft, and so on, other assets, whatever they are, provide a source of these tracks. Okay, so the aircraft receives sensor fusion on the aircraft, local on the aircraft, needs to fuse the data from the onboard sensors, the radars, the other warning receiver, or other optical systems, and the data received from the data links off board. Okay. Which, as you may understand, is not that easy. In fact, this ushered the initial generation. This ushered the initial generation of fusion technology, which used data association or correlation algorithms to identify tracks that most likely describe the same object in space, and then suppressed all except the most accurate copy of the track from the display. This is sometimes referred as correlation or display fusion. The accuracy of this technique was equal to the accuracy of the best track, because of all the possible tracks that we have identified that describe one object, we have a way of measuring which one should be the best, and we keep the best. So we basically trust just one source of data. We trust the radar, we trust the electronic warfare, we trust the data link, but we trust just one. Okay. And this has been available for a while. Let's say all 4th-generation aircraft more or less have this. It is called display fusion because before this, in the multifunction display, if the pilot selected to see all the data at the same time, it actually had small clusters or potential clusters of tracks that were pretty much all duplicates of the same objects. This kind of fusion does these correlation algorithms pretty much do some sort of deduplication, which is obviously useful, but it is just the first step. We are here, okay? We're in the orange, the 80s. The next step in fusion technology was to combine the output of multiple sensor tracks into a blended system solution. By blending the tracks from 2 or more sensors, the resultant system track accuracy approached the accuracy of the best parameter of the contributing sensor. For example, blending tracks from radar and infrared search and track, ERST sensor, could have the range and range rate accuracy of the radar, along with the angle and angle rate accuracy of the ERST. However, the accuracy of the resultant track remains limited by the track update rate. So, as the example says, you use the best measure for every kind of sensor on board and potentially off board, you blend them, and you give the most accurate picture possible to the pilot. This is on top, obviously, to the correlation. However, there is a weakness, that is the fact that the updates of the track must all be synchronized, or somehow you need to be capable of accounting for the lead or the lag of the various measurements. That's how they call them, measurements, made by the radar and by the infrared search and track. Because in this case, they are not synchronized in this case, no? And if the track's update rate, so the fusion rate, is larger than the measurement rate, then there is a loss of accuracy even with optimal algorithms. And here enters one of the problems, because to do this, you have to use computer, you need to do some computation, and so you need to be capable of, there's a computational load that needs to go from the raw radar blip, raw radar return, and raw infrared search and track image and picture to a blended track. You may imagine that is a complex project, a complex process that requires a computational capability. So sometimes, since the sensors may need to focus on one specific track, you may have different update rates and so on. Fifth generation aircraft are designed to process sensor measurements rather than sensor tracks, resulting in an integrated system track containing the most precise track accuracy and enabling cooperative sensing across aircraft. So, they often say the fifth generation, flagship feature is stealth. I think that the flagship feature is this one. So the fusion engine on the F-35, but this is a technology that they said it is common on other aircraft. The Gripen more or less does the same, obviously with different sensors in a different context. But the Russians have some forms of this. The Chinese probably have this as well. I mean, it's not secret. These ideas have been out for decades now. So, anyway, the defining feature is the fact that the fusion engine processes directly the measurements rather than the pre-chewed data that the sensor generates, generating a track. So we said blending. We said blending means correlating the track and taking the best measurement for each track. With fifth generation sensor, you don't even bother of generating a track from a sensor. You just mix together all the sensor measurements and then you generate a track from there. It's difficult to appreciate, but for decades, the aircraft systems have been built with measurements coming in from one side, track data coming out from the other side. So the output of a radar was, in some specified way, was a track. The output of an IRST was a track. The output of a T-pod was a picture. So in a picture with pretty much a square around the target on the ground. So, and then you had to make sense of, put together all of this, make sense of all of this to do the integration. With the fifth generation, you raise all of this to the ground and you use the measurement directly to do the sensing. This is the big difference in sensor fusion for the fifth generation. And this is part of the secret sauce of the F-35. Okay. Measurement level processing can provide earlier discovery of objects in the environment that are hard to detect. By processing the measurement level data, the system can use detections from any sensor or aircraft, off-board sensor, to confirm a track before any single sensor can make the declaration. So what is the declaration? The declaration is when you are sure that the track is something of relevance, is not a false positive, is not a spurious echo, rather reflection, is not a spurious anything, is not a flashing, is not an infrared flash that you happen to see in the Earth. When you're sure about that, then you declare a track, you create this logical record, and the onboard computer uses that logical record to all the systems in the aircraft that should consume that. For a typical, and the main system is the pilot, so it is shown on the screen, or it is shown on the helmet-mounted sight, depending on the situation. Rather, it is sent off board through the data link to other systems. The focus on the measurement data rather than track data also means that combat ID information from a sensor is retained by the system track, even when the track is no longer in sensor field of view, since the system track can be maintained by other sensors or by other aircraft. And this is another extremely important feature. You know that AESA radars pretty much have a field of view that is 60 degrees. A fixed AESA radar, because there are mobile AESA radars and hybrid solutions, but let's suppose that a track goes out of those 60 degrees. In the old type of fusion, in the track blending, that track will be lost, okay? And the identification of the track would be lost with it. In this case, if the track is not considered important, or the track is, or better, if the track is considered important, but the track goes out of the radar's field of view, for example, could be maintained by the DAS system, by the other infrared cameras on the aircraft, and still be followed, and it will still appear to the track information consumer, so the pilot, as a track, as that track specific. And if you have other aircraft, and the F-35 was designed to work in groups of 4, if you have other aircraft that can see the same track, then it's maintained by the different aircraft, then the track is maintained by different aircraft, and you get the data from the off-board systems. In addition to improved accuracy and detection performance, the introduction of an autonomous sensor management capability provided the ability to react and refine objects in the environment much faster than any human could respond. The addition of the autonomous sensor manager is referred as closed loop function. This is level 4. This is level 4 sensor fusion. Remember the levels we discussed before. And it is usually called closed loop fusion, in the sense that on the F-35, it is not the pilot that moves the Earth, is not the pilot that decides, changes the frequencies and the scan patterns of the radar or anything like that. The sensors try to, the sensor with the autonomous sensor manager try to paint a picture for the pilot automatically. So the pilot has this God's view, God's eye view, video game style view, and that's it. He doesn't have to worry about anything. I suppose there are also manual control if that's available, but in theory, you should never use them. This capability provides the fusion process a feedback loop to coordinate the action of sensors in a complementary way to detect, refine, and maintain track based on system priorities, what I was saying. The sensor management capability evaluates each system track, determines any kinematic or ID needs, assesses those needs, that is, okay, there is a blip there, but I don't know how fast it's going, assess those needs according to system track prioritization, and they are quite close, so I want to learn as much as I can about that track, and cues the sensors to collect the required information. Analogous to John Boyd's observe-orient decide and act ODA loop, which expressed the engagement advantage related to the pilot's ability to understand and react to an adversary, closed loop fusion accelerates the ability of the pilot to understand and respond to an object in space faster and often at a much greater range than legacy systems. I hope is okay. Got to different chapter. We can have a short break. Questions? Drop a question in the chat if you are interested. Would Gen 6 basically, therefore, be non-pilot dependent, computer-on-computer combat without pilot interference or even knowledge in some cases? That's the challenge of using artificial intelligence in more than on the 6th generation itself, on the so-called loyal wingmen or CCAs and so on. Because at the end of the day, all of this is designed to give a consumer, that in this case is the pilot, the best information to execute actions, take decisions and execute actions. With the next step, you will need the information consumer won't be the pilot, will be in some sort of AI system. When I was young, the term that was used was expert systems, which sort of alike because they describe what they are in this case. They use a sensor. The consumer will be and it is an incredibly complex challenge. Have the same depth of a human brain. We are not there, and I'm pretty much sure that it will take a very long time to get there. closed loop fusion seems like it was great as long as it... Whoop, are you still there, guys? I think that there was a... Can you see me, please? Please let me know in the chat if you see me. Can you still see me, please? Okay, good. Bit of wobble. Yeah. I mean, it's StreamYard. When it works well, but sometimes has this problem. So, short pause. Let me drink a bit of coffee and a bit of water, and then we come back. The F-35 is not one but three highly common. Here. The F-35 is not one but three highly common aircraft for the U.S. Air Force, Marine Corps, and U.S. Navy, designed to avoid the higher cost of developing, procuring, operating, and supporting three separate tactical aircraft designs to meet the service similar but not identical operation needs, which we know that basically didn't work out, and now everybody doesn't like it. Numerous partner countries, the Navy didn't absolutely want it to went its own way on the NGAT exactly after the experience of the F-35. Numerous partner countries are also involved, and their needs are incorporated into one or more of these three basic variants. The mission system sensors and software, on the other hand, are common among all three variants, and secret and totally in the hands of the United States, which is one of the problems of the F-35. The F-35 is a great aircraft, extremely effective. The problems are not the aircraft. The problem is everything around the aircraft. But anyway, the F-35 sensor suite includes the APG-81 active electronic scanned array, and there will be a new one in Block 4. The ASQ-239 electronic warfare countermeasure suite, the AAQ electro-optical targeting system, the EOTS, the AAQ-37 electro-optical distributed aperture system, DAS system, and the ASQ-242 communication, navigation, and identification system. Okay, I already forgot all these things. These five sensors provide object detection and measurement in radio frequency and in electro-optical and infrared spectrum to F-35 fusion, resulting in more providing to F-35 information fusion, resulting in more information about the objects in the environment around the aircraft that has been available to a fighter aircraft before, and that's a fact. And that's one of the reasons why, for example, the Su-57 is stuffed full of different types of sensors. Exactly for the same reasons the F-35 is. Otis be hacking the stream. Poor Otis. Otis be hacking the stream. Yeah. No, he's at home in the UK. I will drive back tomorrow. By the way, we are still for those who have seen the previous live stream, we are in the basement of my house in Italy. I'm in the middle of a relocation, and that's the reason why I'm doing more live streams than actual videos, because they're faster to prepare. I just need to do the research, but I don't need to produce the video. Going on, in addition to the onboard sensor, the F-35 transmits and receives tracks via the Link 16 data link and the multifunctional advanced data link. The model. I don't know, I'm joking. I don't know how it is pronounced. Link 16 provides connectivity with legacy aircraft and command and control system, which allows the aircraft to transmit information about selected tracks and receive surveillance information from command and control centers, designed primarily for queuing information about the quality and timeliness of the track is limited. Yes, the Link 16 is pretty much the NATO standard, and plenty of systems use the Link 16. And it is also one of the key elements that are used for the integration with the aircraft with plenty of other systems. In the sense that the sort of a silent development that has happened in the United States, the possibility of sharing in the same way the F-35 do among themselves, the same data with other aircraft, but also with different systems, with ships, with ground-based system, ground-based air defenses, and there have been already experiments, for example, F-35 queuing Navy's missiles or Patriot missiles, and using let's say that the exchange, the base layer of the data exchange are based on the Link 16 with new communication protocols, the new different type of packages, different type of information shared over the Link 16s, other than the standard information that is that can do the same operation with different systems. And the United States has invested an ungodly amount of money on this. They are getting, they're improving. They're not there yet, but they are very close to a very deep integration. They have all their. Thank you to Jade and Tara for the super chat. Any info on the F-35 stuck in India? No, I mean I think that they are waiting for they said that there was the electro that the problem, and they are so I suppose they are waiting from the UK the replacement parts, which, by the way, it is showing the complexity of the logistical chain of the F-35, because this was something that probably was not planned. It will take days to work out. As I said, the F-35 is a great aircraft. Everything around the aircraft, it's a disaster. Well, maybe not a disaster, but there are plenty of problems. The F-35 model communication link was designed explicitly for the F-35 to support the sharing of information among the flight group. I think there are, if I remember correctly, it is up to 16 aircraft. Unlike legacy data links, medal bandwidths support passing fusion quality information on all air and surface tracks to other members of the flight group. This data includes a locally derived track stake, track covariance, which is basically a measure of the incertitude, measure of the potential error, ID measurement history, so the identification, and radio frequency history, as well as other metadata associated with each track. So as you can see, what started as relatively simple logical component that included the kinematic state and the identification has become, now includes error data, includes the measurement of the identification, includes the radio frequency history for the emissions that has generated, and other stuff. The amount of potentially redundant off-board information provided by the model was one of the largest challenges for fusion design. It was now possible to have many copies, in some cases greater than 10, of the same track from on-board and off-board sources simultaneously, creating a high potential for clutter. The fusion of this spatially diverse data offered a significant improvement in situational awareness and cooperative senses. And in fact, when they say that the F-35 is a flying computer, the problem is you need a lot of computational power to make sense of all this data. Okay, and in the case of the Russians, if you don't have the latest generations of systems available, you can still do this, but obviously the amount of data that you can use will be limited. The Russians have a system that do exactly that. Among the Su-35, for example, can queue the S-400. A group of Su-35s can queue each other weapons, but they get to this. But the Russian systems don't get to this level of sophistication, or they have more problems because they don't have enough they probably don't have, allegedly, probably, so they don't have the same computational power, or they are much bigger to get the same computational power, and they need to do some things. So that is the problem. The F-35 information fusion approach. Prior to the introduction of generation fusion systems, fusion historically only referred to the data association and estimation process. The earliest, level 1 and eventually 2. The earliest partitioning of the F-35 fusion capability envisioned the sensor management capability to be independent of the fusion process. However, there was already strong evidence that the autonomous sensor manager was fundamental to efficient fusion performance and sensor optimization. What does it mean? So they said at the beginning, okay, the sensors are completely automatic, but let them do what the most possible. Let them characterize all the possible track in the best way possible. What turned out is that this process was not fast enough, accurate enough, or they had it wasn't fast. I mean, they had problems, computational problems, and so they had to move to a different approach. They said rather than characterizing all the tracks to the max detail and max accuracy possible, let's identify which are the most important and just do those. During the early stages of design, the sensor managers was repartitioned to the F-35 fusion design. Figure 4 shows the top-level functional architecture of the F-35 fusion design, highlighting the data association, estimation, both kinematic and ID, and sensor management functionality. So this is a picture that you have probably seen a few times in my videos, but it's all over the internet pretty much. So this is the way it works. So here you have sensors on board and off board that get measurements. On board will be, as I said, radar, infrared search and tracking, optics, and so on. And off board are the data link, the model, but potentially also the link 16, that they are treated as if they were measures, okay? Then there is a virtual interface, which should be a modular thing that it's the equivalent of a driver. For every sensor, you have a driver that translates the measurement into something standard that can process by the fusion engine. Then there is the data association, the level 1, level 2, and 3. And what comes out on the other side of the fusion engine are the system tracks, fully characterized according to a priority. And then you go to the fusion servers, to the fusion server that does the job and provides the data to the information consumers, which are the pilot, the cockpit systems, and the weapons. But from the other side, you have the system tracks have a feedback loop that tells the drivers what the sensors should do, what the sensors should focus on. That's the closed loop function that makes the big difference, that actually makes this type of fusion possible. Because if you try to do this, as was saying before, as you said before, so try to do this in a blanket way, trying to identify everything you have on vaguely in one of your sensors, you will end up not managing to, will end up with not having enough performance for the pilot. The F-35 information fusion design isolates fusion algorithms from both the sensors and data link inputs, as well as any consumers of fused data. Essentially, the fusion algorithm comprises a black box known internally as the fusion engine, and sensor inputs and data consumers are encapsulated in external software objects known as virtual interface model. Here is plain what these are, but basically they are drivers. And this is probably where something has gone badly in the software development, because the idea was to have this modularity in which you just need to develop a new driver and that's fine. If you are the box, if you are integrated weapon, you just need to develop a new driver and everything will work. In practice, it takes forever to do everything, to do anything like that on the F-35. So this is where something has gone wrong. Even now, the aircraft, for a while, there's been a stop to the deliveries because the software didn't work on the technical refresh tree. The current software didn't work on the technical refresh tree, which was a hardware improvement, hardware that added computational power, storage, and this kind of number of other things. Now they are still there delivering them, but the technical refresh tree aircraft are still are certified only for training, at least for the situation, because the software is not yet reliable. The Belgians have completely gone mad because their aircraft are not fully operational. So this I don't know what. Only the developers know. But this is probably the area where something has gone wrong. So where some stuff that was supposed to create the modularity that was required has sort of backfired. So yeah, that's one of the problems. When it works beautifully. It's very difficult to make it work. Information tiers. Sensor fusion can result in poor performance if incorrect information about sensor performance is used. A common failure in data fusion is to characterize the sensor performance in an ad hoc or convenient way. Failure to accurately model sensor performance will result in corruption of the fused results, which is intuitive. One of the key architectural decisions for F-35 fusion is how to share information among aircraft. Independent data can be incorporated optimally into a filter for the highest accuracy. However, if dependent data is incorporated under the assumption of independence, the result will be track instability and eventually track loss. Data consumers on the F-35, including the pilot, receive the kinematic ID estimate track based on all available data sources, both on board and off board. This is referred as Tier 3 solution. However, when sharing information with other aircraft, each F-35 shares the information describing a track based solely on measurement from onboard sensors. This is referred to as the Tier 1 solution. What does it mean? It means that all this information fusion that is presented to the pilot and the other systems works beautifully. But I have, then I send out this data to another aircraft. And then I receive the data from another aircraft, or better, I receive data from another aircraft relative to the same track. And I use them to measure to create my track, a very accurate track that I show to my pilot. But if I should send back to the pilot, to the other aircraft, the same data that he sent to me, it is quite clear that rather than improving the accuracy of all the measurements, because you are comparing slightly different data, you are just giving back to the other aircraft the same data. This is what they refer as track instability, because, for example, the position or speed of the track will potentially very quickly diverge and become completely wrong. So they had to implement this mechanism, Tier 3 and Tier 1, in which the onboard consumers are presented Tier 1, but off-board consumers are presented Tier 1. So just the data from the onboard system. How is this done? And this is, I think, is really genius. By ensuring that the information received from MADL is independent, the track information can be converted into equivalent measurements by the recipient supporting both track-to-track and measure-to-track of the information. The sharing of Tier 1 data ensures that the information is not coupled in any specific fusion algorithms and provides a method for the similar fusion platform to share optimal fusion data in the future. What does it mean? It means that we said before, closed-loop function, modern fifth-generation function, doesn't mix the track output of the individual system, mixes the measurements and comes out with its own track. With this system that uses this kind of Tier 1 solution, in practice, the aircraft shares just the measurements with the others. So the model must transmit an enormous amount, an enormous quantity of data, because all the outputs of all the onboard sensor of an aircraft are transmitted to all the other aircraft, where they're treated as measurements and they do their own information fusion. And since the information fusion engines are all equal, having the same data should give the same info, more or less the same result on all the aircraft in the group. And also in this way, it is future-proof, and it is one way that potentially this is not connected with any algorithm, any fusion algorithm. So if you just can offboard the data, offboard the measurements, you can give them to everything or everyone, and they can do whatever they want. In late 2016, Lockheed Martin and the US government used this technique to share an F-35 fuse track on a target drone across MADL to surface-based weapons that had no line of sight of the drone. That was I was referring before. In this case, was integrated indirectly with MADL, not through Link 16, but that's the thing. I need a short stop. Any question? Okay, okay, this is extremely nerdy. The number of people connected is is going definitely down, but it is fine. What time is it? We have been on for an hour and a half, and we are just more or less midway. Okay, I'm not sure we will. Well, there will be parts that I will be skipping a bit more. Let's see if there is any one. I just hope that Lockheed won't adopt any soon. I won't adopt any soon optimizing workforce by laying off software testers and replacing with the AI and agile development with users as bug testers. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. There's a PowerPoint that goes with this, isn't there, Gus? No, there's no PowerPoint that goes with this. There, at least not that I'm aware of, I'm afraid. So you need to go this and support the things. Okay, I'll try to go a bit faster because otherwise it is becoming, yeah, definitely heavy. Okay. Let me drink a little bit. So let's look just the concept. Information tiers. To incorporate dependent information or non-pedigree information into the F-35 estimate, Fusion includes a covariance intersection update that is more tolerant of rebroadcasted data. The covariance intersection algorithm reduces the error of the estimate when novel information is introduced, but does not improve the error with redundant data. This technique provides flexibility for incorporating data from many different data links in the future where the pedigree of the data is not known. Really interesting, this using the term pedigree, but it's fine. The integration of legacy data links uncovered other challenges to optimal fusion. When system tracks are sent off-board over a data link, it is important to sense the most precise error characterization available for the system track. The covariance metrics provide a sensor characterization of the uses of the data. However, in many legacy data links, quality factors are used to describe track errors rather than multidimensional covariant matrices. What does it mean? So, with every measurement, you have an error. And to do the estimates that we were discussing before, you need to understand the error. Because the algorithm that is used to do so is called the Kalman filter that I won't get into the details. There are very old video that explains what it is, but for example, it's a black box, a thing that does estimations for us. Now, the difference between the F-35 model and everything else is the fact that the model sends these covariance matrices, which is basically a very detailed description of the error, potential error of every measurement through the model. All data links just classify the accuracy of the information. They are very accurate, almost accurate. We don't know. That's probably rubbish. Okay, so you can translate these error information into covariance matrices that give you a numeric description of the error. And this is a further problem for Fusion. Apparently, they found a way to go through this, but it's still a problem. It is still a problem of the old data links when these problems were not even thought about. This is more interesting. Evidence-based combat ID, combat identification. Combat ID is the process of attaining an accurate characterization of detected objects in the joint battle space. Characterizations may include affiliation, which is friendly, enemy, neutral, and so on. Class type, nationality, and mission configuration. And when I read this, I actually fell off, for the first time, I fell off the chair, because it means that through the radar, or maybe through the EOS, they can sort of understand what is hanging below the wings of a fighter. So they can understand what is the payload, the armament, eventually identify what are the weapons being used, or have a good estimates of the weapons. So if you identify a J-10, a Chinese J-10, and you see that it has 4 air-to-air missiles, maybe you don't know exactly the model, but you should assume that it is a PR-15, so very long range, and so on. And now this, for a very short distance and with very high frequency radar, is, well, possible, has always been possible, at least in theory. Done systematically for everything is a great capability. And in fact, one of the strong points of the F-35 is exactly this capability of doing a very accurate combat ID, even at very long distance, very long ranges. The F-35 employs a probabilistic evidential reasoning approach to ID in a fundamental departure from heuristic algorithms employed on other tactical platforms. In many combat ID systems on aircraft, what is used is a system that says, well, if you detect this, then it's this. If this, this is this, this is this. For the F-35, they decided to do something different. They decided to switch to a probabilistic formulation. The decision to switch to a probabilistic formulation was driven by lessons learned from those platforms to eliminate misidentification due to false declaration and the inability to handle ambiguous information sources. So using a statistical method, you can handle ambiguous signatures, something that you don't, ambiguous signature, something that you don't know what it is. In the other systems, if you fail the if pyramid, somewhere you may end up with something that, yeah, it looks like this and could be something different. Now there is an interesting treaty of Bayes of why they use, of how they worked, what the kind of approach they decided. Use Bayes statistics or Dempster-Shafer. They use Dempster-Shafer, which is something that they personally, I don't understand too much. That's one of the things that I will never capable of understanding. I tried to learn this, to study this. I'm familiar with Bayes, but not with this. Anyway, previous approaches to combat AD have been forced to limit the platform set due to processing and memory constraints. Yeah, if the sequence of if, which is relatively easy to implement. By contrast, the F-35 design took a holistic approach to include all tactically relevant platforms in the theater, minimizing misidentification of platforms that are not in library. Platforms are interconnected in a strict hierarchical taxonomy with levels in taxonomy level, subtype, type, class, and affiliation, as shown in Figure 6. So this is what it does. There is a hierarchical level in which this system takes a decision, but decide before if it is a land, air, or sea contact, the affiliation, enemy, friend, neutral, if it is a helicopter, a fighter, a cargo, the type of helicopter, the type of subtype, and so on. The algorithm creates ambiguity lists and associated confidences for each level of the taxonomy. The type ambiguity list is inferred from the subtype ambiguity list. The class ambiguity list is blah, blah, blah. So it's inferred bottom up. So the confidence of the higher level in the taxonomy is always greater than or equal to the confidence at lower level, because for each of these levels, there is a number which expresses the probability that the system, the aircraft, is exactly what it says it be. The platform taxonomy also provides the framework for mapping sensors attributes to a platform set. This mapping, contained in an onboard relational threat databases, encodes the transitional probability of observing a feature given a particular platform subtype. So you may have heard of the scenario files of the F-35. These databases, they contain, so there are several gigabytes of data for every aircraft that contains all the data that depends that are used to traverse this hierarchy of identifications. And they are something that are tormentously difficult to create. There are specialized labs that, for example, use models of Russian or Chinese aircraft, they illuminate with the radar and detect the return, and they use those data to create a library that in turn will be allow the F-35 to say that if they see something like that is a J-16, okay? This is the kind of work, and this is another of the weakness of the F-35, because it takes time to do this kind of characterization. It takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, very expensive. The updates take a lot of time, and that's another of the problem of the F-35 that requires such a large infrastructure to be fully effective. In the aircraft, without these scenario file, without the threat database, it won't be capable of doing the ID. These libraries are universal now for every aircraft, but the libraries for other systems are much simpler. They're less accurate, of course, but they're also much simpler. Okay, I skip all of this. You should be grateful to me because I am skipping the Okay, I think there was some wobbles, I suppose. I'm saying I am skipping all this part, which displays the statistical way and the problems that they have in building this kind of identification. I'm also skipping the pignistic probabilities. Spoiler alert, they have nothing to do with the pigs. What's important is the example. What sort of thing clarifies everything is this example. It says, in this example, a Link 16 declaration of fighter was combined with the model declaration of the F-35 to produce a high confidence type declaration of F-35 and a friendly confidence of 1. So this is an extract of the F-35. When the pilot touches this aircraft with two, as is touch sensitive. This window that you see below it opens. Okay, you see Fusion ID. In the second line, you see Fusion ID F-35. Okay, and unknown. So this is identified as an F-35. The confidence is 1, so 100. It's 100% an F-35, and the other two are 0. Okay. The model says that it's an F-35. The link 16 say it is a fighter, and below you have the fused kinematic data. Okay. To do this thing, all the stuff that we discussed before, all the development, all the development, all the billions, all the time, all the work that went into the F-35 was done to give the pilot the possibility of doing this. And the data that is actually seeing, that the pilot is seeing, are data that are correct as much as possible, which doesn't mean that you have a correct immediate identification, because now he's saying that it's 100% an F-35, but in another situation, it could be a 70% an F-35, 20% something else, no? But that 20% is really a 20%, okay? Or the 70% would be really a 70%. And this is the thing that makes a world of difference for the pilot. And by the way, notice that it is outside the red lines that actually identify the search sector for the radar. So this is a track that is maintained by other sensors. And since it is receiving a link 16 track, it is a track that is maintained outside. So this is the key thing. Honestly, I would have preferred an example in which the identification was not just 100%, but this gives the idea. And this is one of the key features. This is one of the superpowers of the F-35. Other aircraft don't do something similar in different formats, in different ways, but it is they're not as accurate. At least as we know, we don't know how the Chinese systems are. I mean, and trust me, the Chinese understand all this stuff much better than I do. Autonomous sensor management. This is something that we covered before, but let's go through. Let's quickly go through. Technical advances in the capability of modern sensors increases the number of multiple sensor systems, and the migration to increased connectivity have led to a sensor network that has exceeded the ability of a human to efficiently control them. This performance gap led to the development of an automatic feedback mechanism in the closed-loop fusion model that autonomously modifies the actions of the sensor suite to achieve a mission-level objective or behavior. That is the closed-loop fusion that we saw before. The use of an algorithm to task or modify the behavior of the information source is referred to as process refinement, as is categorized as JDL Fusion Level 4. The goals of the sensor manager are to 1, reduce the pilot workload by automating sensors actions and selection, 2, prioritize information requests, including pilot requests, background volume searches and fusion information needs, and 3, reconfigure sensor assets to compensate for individual sensor loss or unavailability. So as we were saying before, the pilot doesn't control the individual sensor, the aircraft does, and there is this feedback loop that, considering how important is a track, uses the sensor to characterize one track rather than the other. Okay. This means prioritized information. This is the prioritized information requesting, including pilot requests. So the pilots can override the system and say, I want to know that one, what is it? What is, okay? But the other important thing is this one, the background volume searches. This means that these are the kind of search that the system and the sensors do all around the aircraft just to see if there is anything. So because in theory, during the background volume searches, one of the sensors picks up something, and then it is characterized and becomes a track. Okay, then it is characterized and becomes a track. But once you have a track, you need to keep doing this volume search because some other stuff must come up. And the way, for example, a radar that does a volume search rather than tracking a target work is very different, okay? In many radars, there is really a different mode. And this is because in the 80s and late 70s and 80s, track while scan became such a big deal, no? And but I mean, you need to have a balance between managing your tracks and still doing these background volume searches, and this is all automatic on the F-35. So again, the approach of this idea the original approach of this idea was to track was to characterize every track as the best in the best possible way. And what came independent of everything before the loop. No, that was the idea. However, that approach said that these are focused on optimizing information of a given track while neglecting the value of that information for the mission objectives. So if there may be a track that is far away, that is probably going away, is not relevant, you don't want to characterize it as bad. It's not relevant for the mission. You should focus on the stuff that is relevant for the mission. And this is what improves the situational awareness of the pilot, and it is what this kind of sensor fusion is actually providing. And SLED, which is the author of another paper, defines situational awareness from the perspective of the fusion customer, the pilot, which could then be decomposed further into times or distances where the key decisions must be made. That is, in the sense that the pilot needs to make some decisions in specific stages at specific times. So it must be provided for the information for taking those decisions at a specific time. I am piloting a fighter. Well, not me personally. I say I'm the pilot. If piloting an aircraft, it is entering, for example, Iran, as we said before. I mean, while you go through the border and you start seeing, for example, radars popping up that trying to focus on you, you need to decide, for example, which one to attack and which weapons to use to engage and so on. And you need to do that before you get too close because you become vulnerable, for example. So there is a place and the time where you must take the decision. Another constraint could be the range and the altitude and the speed at which you can launch the weapons and so on. So it is important to give the pilot not all the information possible, but the information that is required to take those specific decisions that are fundamental to execute the mission. In fact, it says the necessary information to support these key decisions are independent of the sensor's ability to meet these needs. In the sense that the sensors don't know that they're just sensors, they're stupid. No, they know nothing about the mission. The information boundaries and associated information needs define a dimensional space that can be used to derive a global objective function to support autonomous sensor management and can be used to define a sensor and fusion capability necessary to support this decision. So, what is a global objective function, which I don't explain. It is an engineering concept. It's a bit complicated to explain, but so it's not just one target. It is several different targets that define a sort of compromise use of all the system. A benefit from this mapping is that the mission goals can be directly related to the sensor capability in terms of range, accuracy, and latency. This allows the designer to trace system-level fusion situation awareness requirements to individual sensor performance requirement. The autonomous sensor management algorithm focuses on providing information needs for every track based on priority. The goal is not to drive each track to the best accuracy, but to instead drive it to sufficient accuracy and information content. In practice, for situational awareness, there is a level of component accuracy, example range angle, where the information is sufficient to support the pilot's understanding of the environment to decide. Additional accuracy beyond this point does not significantly improve the pilot's awareness or decision-making ability. So you have to characterize a track to the point that is needed for the pilot to use that information for a decision. Doing more may not be necessary. That's the key point. And all of this is important because if you try, as I was explained before, if you try to characterize everything, you end up with the necessity of sensors that are not good enough. They don't have enough time to do this characterization. You need more computational powers. So it is something that you really need to do and you can't do. Okay, it's been 2 hours. There is cooperative sensing, which is another important point, and here explains how it is implemented on the F-35, but honestly, I am exhausted, and I probably will skip this because I actually made a video about cooperative sensing. Maybe it doesn't go into these details, so you may be interested in doing this. Now, where you can find this if you want to read it. This is behind a paywall, so I paid money for this. Maybe you can find it somewhere else on the internet for free as a PDF, but this is IEE, so it's behind a paywall. Obviously, since we went through the entire document, nothing forbids you to take the video and scroll stop to read it yourself in all the details if you want to really understand all the details of the statistical functions that have been used for the combat ID, for example, to say something. Now, I would say let's have a chat. Let's get some questions. And then we close the thing because tomorrow I need to drive to the UK. So let's see. Gas Hero. Reminds me of Guitar Hero, which is, yeah, no comment. Thanks for reading that for me, Gus. You're welcome. You're awesome. I assure you I'm not. But anyway, thank you. Any data point is vulnerable to contamination, higher number, higher vulnerability, even if just noise and not active. Confidence again becomes fluid if data points no-go gate is wide. I don't, okay, yes, what you say is true. I don't understand if it is really a question. Lot of F-35 haters here. Must be blind hatred for the West, is like it or not. The F-35 is the most capable and survivable jet on the market. No, the point is that to understand the point is that the F-35 doesn't exist as an isolated aircraft. In a sense, for decades, we measure the performance of the aircraft based on objective parameters. How fast could fly, how agile they were, the range of the radar, this kind of the type of weapons that it could bring, and so on. The F-35 is the result of an entirely different concept that the United States Air Force came up with, that is a typical doctrinal thing that the Americans did. Now, they imposed this on the, let's say, Allied, because that's basically what they did. And so they imposed this in the sense that doctrinally, in the sense they indoctrinated the representative of the defense and the air forces of the Allies to think in the same way, to integrate with what they are doing. So when they buy the F-35, when they see the F-35, they believe it is best thing since sliced bread, which indeed, if used in a context like the one that we have seen, for example, in Iran yesterday night, yeah, it is. It definitely works. It is an aircraft like this would never work for the Russian Air Force, for example. But even if it would be done in a different way, okay, even physically speaking. It's not that the ideas as such are not good or not interesting, is that they also have different requirements. They think in a different way. They always say that the Western capability is decentralized, while the Soviet and Russian capability is more centralized, and the Chinese as well are more centralized. The Chinese are taking a different route. They're changing. They're really changing. But the Russians have a mission for their Air Force that has nothing to do with the mission of Western Air Forces. So they need a different type of system, different type of fusion. Now, these concepts are objectively useful, but they need to implement them in a different way. So when you start making comparison between the Russians, the Russian way of doing and the Western, and you say, but the Western is okay, whatever. The Western is more advanced on this and that because they can do that. Yeah, okay, the Russians will never do that. They don't even plan to do that, okay? So so that's the difference. So sorry, I went off track, but yeah. Would with APG-8185 and Meteor still be suitable to take on larger air superiority fighters? Well, the F-35 with the Meteor has a problem of endurance, in the sense in stealth, or say combat permanence. in the sense that the in full stealth configuration can probably carry 2 or 4, no more. But the Meteor is an excellent weapon, and coupled with the F-35 sensors, it's definitely a bad customer for any opponent. Where do you get this information? I'm impressed every time. I systematically do way more research. I don't want to say about anyone else because I don't know everyone, but I'm definitely do more research than many because I want to be because that's the shape of my thinking, the shape of my brain. I need to get to in every subject that is relevant to me. I need to get to some depth. It was the same way when I was in my previous life, when I was working in IT. I had a relatively senior position. I had people to coordinate, a project to manage. And still, I wanted to learn the ropes of every specific technology that wanted to be used. Then there were people better than me that did the actual work, the actual heavy lifting, but I needed to understand the details. And so I just do much more research. Obviously, the internet is a thing, but I also have plenty of books. I can't go upstairs and show you the quantity of books that I have here, but I probably have 1,000 book here. Another couple of hundred will come here from the UK in the next month. And then I probably have another 1,000 of books at my mother's house. Not everything is aviation related, obviously, or technology related, science related, but there's plenty. There's plenty. And so that's the thing. And just considering the time. So many people say, one of my normal videos research takes 15, 20 hours, and video production 15, 20 hours. The research for this live stream was faster because I had already read the paper. I already knew what was in there. So I just spent 2 or 3 hours reviewing it yesterday. But otherwise, that's the time. So you can do basically just one video a week. And many actually have suggested me to say, okay, get an editor, no? So because this will get the things off of you. And I tried, but it is almost impossible, because if I mention closed loop sensor fusion, they need to get and find that specific picture that is copyright free, that can be used in a video, that explains the closed loop sensor fusion on the F-35, that illustrates closed loop sensor fusion on the F-35. I already tried two editors that said, no, I understand your point, I will try. I gave them some stuff to do, and they made a mess. So there's no alternative than doing everything myself, till the day I will find that cheap, because I mean the channel actually pays the bills, but that's it. I'm not becoming rich. And until I find a cheap editor that is also passionate about these things, and if doesn't know anything, knows where to go and find the stuff. So yeah, that's the problem. If the F-35 is automatically dropping targets from the screen, one better hope that they are 100% confident or a bad surprise could be on the way. And that's what took, the reason why it took so long to develop the system. For this to work, must really work, because otherwise you're toast. And it works very well, but not as well as desired today. It is well enough to be a relevant advantage, but is not as well as the pilots or the air forces would desire. Sometimes it still has problems. And that's the reason why you often hear that it's impossible. If we took 10 years or 15 years to make this thing work and develop the correct software, it is impossible that the Chinese or the Russians are actually capable of doing it in less time. My reply is, well, when you started, maybe just right after that, the Chinese and the Russians started as well. So and this is not a matter of microchips or production capabilities, just software. So I think that it is probably the most advanced because they start before and they really focused on this. Is probably the advantage is not that big. Probably on the Russians, they have a significant advantage, because I suspect that the Su-57, for example, does all this stuff, but is slower, less accurate, and so on. The Chinese, I don't know. I think they're more or less at the same level. Okay, I went away a minute. So this is probably the way the universe has to tell me that I should go to bed and sleep and do prepare the suitcase for tomorrow and go to bed. There is just one other question that was interesting. Oh, I lost it. So there was a question that says, does other question have the same libraries, same type of libraries as the F-35? Yes. And there is some level of exchange within NATO and between friendly countries. The problem is that, the libraries that the other countries use are simplified because they just don't have all the means and the global reach that the United States have. So whatever is in there is probably simpler. There are much more stuff that is not classified and so on. So this is the difference, but there are really other, this is actually creating the libraries for the system is constant work that all the air forces and all the producers constantly do. One of the strong points of the Gripen is that these updates can be done basically at squadron level on a dispersed base, while by everyone and then distributed around, while with the F-35 are done only centrally in the United States. No? This is one of their selling points, and they may have a point there. They're shooting a thing at us. Our database says, be confident it is this thing, but now we have live updates and it may be this other thing. Yeah, may happen. Probably doesn't happen often, but yes, may happen. One last one. Could electronic warfare spoof this data collection? Potentially, yes. It's a very complex and expensive activity that the United States and other countries, to a different degree, to a lesser extent, they do. And emission control, together with electronic warfare, is the way of defending from another country, another organization wanted to acquire the data. Okay, and I think this is it, guys, because really it's 22:21. Let's wait a minute, so it will be 22:22. It will be a palindrome, but anyway. So thank you very much for watching. This was really for nerds, and in fact, there wasn't not many people have remained, but this is the thank you very in the description, if you want to, you are so kind to actually help the channel. There are links for Patreon. You can become a member by clicking the join. You can make a donation if you are so kind to, if you consider to do so. All the links are in the description. So this is it, I suppose. Thank you very much, and see you next time.